two very special guests that we have here today. Please help me welcome Adora and Adrianna Spitak. Come on up, girls. Take a bow. This is Adora and Adrianna. Okay, who's going to start?
I will.
Thank you.
But my sister Adrianna is a musician, as you can tell from her violin, and I'm an author. And when you look at me, you might say, well, you look kind of young to be an author. What do you think is the average age? How old do you think of most writers as being? Do you think most writers are pretty old, or do you think they're pretty young? What do you think?
30.
So when you think of writers, you might think of people who are a little older than me. But one of the great things about writing is that there's no age limit, or there's no minimum age that you have to be. And you don't even have to start writing. You could tell stories to your parents, to your friends, to anyone that you know that you want to share a story with. And what I'm going to be talking about today is the story in all of us. You could write it, you could tell it, you could stand on a stage, you could dance, you could play a violin, you could draw, you could do really any kind of thing to share your story and to have lots of fun in the process. So my credentials, or at least why I'm here, how I got started, it really all started with my love for reading. Is there anyone here who loves to read? Maybe your parents read to you? Do you like to hear stories? I'm seeing some raised hands. Great, I'm glad everybody here likes to read. So what is so great about reading? So you want to tell me, why do you like to read or hear stories?
I like the language of it. I like hearing it in my head.
Hearing it in your head, the language
Stories,
of it.
yeah.
I love the images that come into mind when I'm opening a book and I see images. I'm reading about princesses and castles and I'm able to actually see it, or about dragons. You can tell I like fantasy a lot. But there's really all kinds of books that create images in my mind. So when you read, or when you're hearing a story and you hear the language, or you see the images, and you're really excited about it, you're reading someone's story, you're reading a story. And so I loved reading from when I was very young. And I thought everybody in the world likes to read. There's just no way that you could not like to hear stories and to read and to write. So then when I met someone who said, I don't like to read that much, my world just kind of, I guess it would be a little dramatic to say my world sort of shattered, but I was 5 and I had this idea, everyone in the world must like to read. And so to have it just completely dashed like that, it was really something for a 5-year-old. So I decided, being 5, and I was a very stubborn 5-year-old, if I wanted something, I would usually get it. I said, I'm going to make everybody like to read and write. So being 5, I also didn't know that maybe I would have a few challenges along the way. But being 5 was a really good benefit because I decided this, and later as I turned 6 and 7, I would start to write more. I published my first book, Flying Fingers, Master the Tools of Learning Through the Joy of Writing. And this allowed me to go around to schools, and I would speak to assemblies or to classrooms, and I would say, here's why I love to read. Here's why you should love to read too. And so my whole journey of speaking and writing and teaching, it really started with this single 5-year-old's idea, I want to make everybody like to read. And I started telling my story in different ways. In Flying Fingers, I tell stories through short stories. So most of my stories are a few pages long, between, I guess, 9 pages up to 15 pages or more. So usually short stories. And again, there's no minimum length or maximum length for a story. You could write a book that's 1,000 pages long, or you could write one that's 1 page long or shorter. That's the great thing about writing, is that you decide what you want to do. And when you tell a story, you don't have to have a really dramatic thing happen. You don't have to have a battle with a dragon. You could if you wanted. You could have it be about something simple, like arguing with your parent about what you're going to eat for dinner or something like that. So it's really up to you. That's the great thing about stories to me, is you can decide. I also really love to write poems. Has anyone here ever read a poem? Raise your hand if you've read a poem before. Does anyone know what a poem is? You want to tell me what a poem is? Go ahead. You know what a poem is?
Sometimes it rhymes, right?
It rhymes
Sometimes, right?
yeah, it rhymes sometimes, and you can like words too.
Very good. So a lot of poems that we know about, they rhyme. So maybe they'll so a poem that I wrote, it goes like this: Pum dee dee dum goes the drum. Some like to tap their feet and hum. And that's all that it is. It's 2 lines. It's 2 lines long. But again, poetry. It can be a big book. It could be short. Sometimes it rhymes, like that one. You heard a lot of rhymes. Pum dee dee dum drum. Hum. I was really struggling to come up with rhymes, and I thought, you know, a drum makes a good one. So poems can rhyme. There are poems that don't rhyme. In fact, a lot of people have gotten famous for writing poems that don't rhyme. So again, poems, just like stories, are really great ways to be creative. You can write about pretty much anything that you want. So I love to write poems, and my second book, called Dancing Fingers, right here on the document camera, is a book that I co-authored with my older sister, Adrianna. She's not just a musician, she also loves to write poetry. And remember what I said earlier about how poems don't have to rhyme, some of them don't have to rhyme. So if you look at my poems, most of them do rhyme. I'll be saying things like nice, suffice, in different rhyme schemes. But then if you look at my sister's poetry, doesn't it look a little different? See, there's not so many rhymes, and it's very free form. So in one book, you see how 2 sisters could write in completely different ways. And I know that I've been saying how wonderful I think writing is, and I've been saying a lot of things about writing, but this really is the amazing thing, is that you don't have to be identical to anyone else. Maybe you've heard about, like, you know, popcorn always being different, or various things. There's no 2 alike, and in writing it's much the same thing, because it's your ideas and you decide what you want to write about. So poetry is a great way to tell a story. Novels, my 3rd book, Young in Disguise, which I just published, I don't have it with me right now, but it's a very, very long story, all about the same thing. So it's a couple hundred pages, so you could write a really long story, you could write a pretty short story, you could write a poem. There are many different ways to tell your story, and these are just the ones you can do through writing. My sister Adrianna, she not only writes poetry and stories, but she really tells stories, or she sometimes shares emotions through her music. So do any of you like to listen to music?
Yes.
I see some raised hands. So, to tell the truth, I usually listen to music because my older sister or my dad, they have turned it on, and I'm kind of listening by default because I'm in the car. But I like to listen to music too. I've gained a lot of interest from their influences, so if someone asks me what my favorite musician is, it'll likely be from either my dad or my sister. Now, Adrianna is a violinist, so she plays the violin. Does anyone here play a musical instrument? You do? What kind of instrument do you play?
I play the piano.
You play the piano? Great. My sister, she loves to play violin and piano, and she's actually been doing that for a little while now. So I really admire you, because I tried to begin piano and it became too hard for me. I gave up, which doesn't show which means I wasn't that determined, unfortunately. But my mom let me do that because she said, hey, you know, you like writing, so.
Everybody
And
gets
so I ended up
something.
doing it.
Smart mommy.
So my sister is going to share how she, I guess, really tells stories through music. Not always music that she's written, but often music from composers. What piece are you going to be playing today?
I'm playing Bach Partita in D minor.
Okay, so it's a classical music piece, and you can just sit
she's
back,
come on
relax,
stage.
and she's
She's coming on
trying to
stage.
hop on stage.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, I'll grab this for you. No. Okay.
So it really shows that when I say tell a story, it doesn't necessarily just have to be a story that you've made up, or something that's happened to you, or, you know, something funny. And it doesn't just have to be through writing. It could be through music, it could be just to share some emotions, and there's no boundaries as far as how to tell a story in you. So here's Adrianna.
Yay.